Thank you, Ben. How many of us have participated in a flower communion before? A bunch of us. How many have celebrated more than 5 flower communions? Quite a few. How many have never before today participated in a flower communion? Several. It's a pretty cool experience, I think. It's a little chaotic, but that's part of human life, right? And it's a powerful enough experience that it's been celebrated for 100 years now. It's evidently meaningful enough. It strikes a chord in human beings enough that we continue to do it year after year. It goes on like this, as Ben just read. You heard some of the history earlier, Čapek and his family creating the largest Unitarian church in the world, 3,200 people in Prague in 1941. Norbert's wife, Reverend Maya Čapek, brought the flower communion to the United States when she came to visit her daughter in 1940, probably also to escape the worst horrors of World War II. Norbert and his daughter did not escape those horrors. They continued to serve the congregation in Prague until they were arrested by the Gestapo in 1942 for listening to foreign broadcasts, the horror, and even in starvation and torture. While in the concentration camp at Dachau, he held a flower communion with his fellow prisoners with whatever flowers they could find, or the grasses, or the weeds that were growing at the camp. As my friends David and Teresa Schwartz wrote, they testified to a beauty larger than themselves and to a love that would outlast them. What we have done today is not a historical reenactment of something over and done, but an affirmation of our continuity with the generations of struggle for ever widening liberty. The flower ceremony, lovely though it is, isn't a diversion from ugly reality, but a gentle fierceness which proclaims that in the midst of sinister days, there is always the light of beauty. The Nazis killed Norbert Čapek, but his spirit and courage and commitment live on today through the hymns, through the prayer, through this flower communion. These qualities have passed, and it's turned us to make them real and continue that commitment. It is a pretty cool ritual, and some of the ministers have been noticing for the last year or so that this centennial was coming up, and so planning ahead how to make it more interesting and more spectacular to really celebrate with the folks back in Czechoslovakia. A group of us put out a 40-page booklet with some stories, with lots of openings and closings. They created a new cantata, which is some sort of musical piece. They created a couple of new hymns. There's a lot of interesting stuff that they included in this piece. And one of those is a video of a Unitarian hymn being sung by some folks in Prague in their native language, which I chose not to show to us today because we don't understand that language for the most part. And it would just be sort of like, listen to these people and their interesting language and how exotic and wonderful. And that felt kind of icky to me. So we're not going to do that. They did have one that had the English language subtitles in it, but it turns out I don't like their theology either. They are definitely Unitarian, but they're not Universalist. And so one of the lines was, "For heaven waits for those whose spirits have won through." I think heaven waits for all of us, whether our spirits have won through or not. Whatever day, whatever we're able to achieve or not, we can still find our way to heaven, whatever that means for each of us in this room. So we're not going to see their cool little videos, but we are going to hear more about them. They also included the song "In the Garden." Now, some of you probably know the songs about Andy. Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. It's about Jesus. It's my mother's favorite hymn. And it ends with, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. That's the opposite of communion. First of all, I think it's a testimony to Jesus that he makes you feel that you're very special when you're talking to him in the garden. But the sense of communion is that we are all connected. We are all one. Just because you got to spend a few minutes in the garden with the guy does not mean that you're the only one that's ever happened to. Frustrates me. That's not a Universalist sensation. And so I'll not play that song for us. Rather, I will talk about when I was a camp counselor at a Presbyterian church in Columbus, Ohio, Geneva Hills, and the Reverend Dick Beidler there. We were selling a communion. The first time I'd ever done tincture. You take a piece of bread and you dip it in the wine, and then you have that way. And that prevents us from spreading quite so many germs around. And his comments were that as the moment that happens, we connect with others who are taking communion or have taken communion or will take communion all around the world. Throughout time, we are one body in the host of believers, which I still was at that point. And that feels beautiful to imagine that we're all connected in that timeless moment, that whenever we take that sort of communion, we are connected to one. That's metaphorical and lovely. I think it's more scientifically accurate these days. We know that we are, in fact, all connected. We are all part of one living organism. And whether or not you believe in that theology, the idea that we are connected, we are one, we are all together, we are one beautiful garden of flowers, is an important insight. Chapek wrote, "In this holy resolve may we be strengthened, knowing that we are God's family, that one spirit, the spirit of love, unites us, and may we endeavor for a more perfect and more joyful life." In that sense of family, in that sense of one spirit of love uniting us, we can take some lessons home with us from this ritual. Whatever flower you received today, it was beautiful. It was a miracle. You have received a miracle today. May you take that home with you and be reminded and find joy in this life today. Whatever flower you brought with you to add to our communion, it is worthy. You are a worthy addition to our community this morning. Are you disappointed because you received a wilted flower with a broken stem? You have received the gift of the opportunity to examine your expectations. And what an important lesson that is. If you brought an extra flower so that others may have them, thank you for welcoming someone else. If you arrived and did not have flowers, thank you for helping someone else feel useful and needed. However you attend today, whether in person or online, or if you're watching later, you have helped create a gorgeous, powerful, larger than ourselves congregation that embodies and proclaims the living truth that we are one. We are in communion with each other, not just when we drink the grape and eat a wafer, not merely when we bring or receive a flower, but always, every moment, we are one together. We make up one garden. Each of us brings our own beauty and our own quirks, and we grow together to co-create a brighter tomorrow. And isn't that lovely? So may we be.